whenever I come up with an idea or something I want to talk about and I go into the editing phase, I usually end up finding myself editing for hours and hours. I'm not happy with how it goes. I'm not happy with how it ends up. And usually I just abandon the whole project. So this time around, I'm going to do something differently because as someone who goes on YouTube a lot, one of the things I've noticed is that I'm not really watching, physically looking at the screen when I'm looking at videos as much as I used to. And a big reason that is because I just like to have something in the background while I play, while I go for a clear and a shmup, or I'm playing some fighting games online. And I think that's something I want to try for myself. So I just want to try making videos that people can just play in the background. They're either doing chores or they're like on the car. They're trying to get clear and a shmup. They're trying to play some fighting games. I want to make videos that kind of cater to that kind of crowd because I'm a part of that crowd. And I feel like that's just a great way for me to get out videos like super consistently and super fast. So without further ado, let's actually get into a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while now, and that is horizontal shmups versus vertical shmups. And I think this discussion is very interesting for a couple of reasons, really. And I think the first thing I have to talk about is kind of the preference in players, at least in North America, Europe, like the Western world. The preference has shifted away from horizontal shmups, which pretty much used to dominate throughout the early 90s, late to mid 80s. And now there's more of a preference for vertical shmups. Most people getting into the genre today most likely started from a vertical shmup. They didn't start with what I call the classic trifecta of shmups, which is Darius, R-Type, and Gradius, right? Most people start from shmups either through Touhou or through Cave or through even like Taito. I've seen that a couple times, believe it or not. So I think seeing this shift and focus away from horizontal to vertical over the years, even the years I wasn't really playing shmups, like way back in the 90s, I think it's very interesting to see that shift happen in real time. And I just wanted to talk about why I think this shift is happening, and ultimately why do I think vertical shmups are here to stay, and I don't really see us going back to horizontal shmups. So to start off this discussion, I want to just preface this by saying I love horizontal shmups, and I think there's a good chunk of shmup players out there who think that horizontal shmups will just never reach the heights that vertical shmups can reach, and that's a take I strongly disagree with. And there are games out there that just prove that idea wrong. I mean, a great example of this is Border Down. In my opinion, Border Down is not only one of the greatest horizontal shmups, it's just one of the greatest shmups ever. And that whole game is a whole video in itself. Like, that game's it's surprising how Border Down hasn't really been played too competitively or like too seriously in the West. It actually blows my mind because it's such a quality game. But you got games like Border Down that obviously prove this theory wrong. Another game that proves this theory wrong, if you ask me, is Akai Katana and Akai Katana's older brother, Pro Gear. I think those are another extremely quality games. And I'm really, I'm really surprised they don't get that much play from a lot of Cave fans. I remember, though, when the arcade stadium was first being announced. I remember when Shmup Junkie was covering it, everybody else was covering it. Everybody was on Pro Gear like crazy. I still remember that. That was like what? That was like the height of COVID too, man. I remember everyone was going crazy. Everybody loved Pro Gear. And then it just kind of died down, unfortunately. And I don't really blame people for that. Our tastes just shift and move as the years keep on going. So I think that whole take about how horizontal shmups aren't as good as vertical shmups, I don't think that's the case. But I think what's interesting about vertical shmups, what I think gives vertical shmups the edge over horizontal shmups, is the fact that developers, old and new, indie or non-indie, are willing to give vertical more of a chance. They're willing to release their first shmup as vertical. They're willing to continue making vertical shmups. And I think there's a lot of reasons behind this. The first of them being, I just feel like there's more documentation and more support, more resources for vertical games, vertical shmups over horizontal shmups. Because if you look at what Cave was doing with Pro Gear, they had no idea how to make a horizontal shmup. I mean, Akeda, in an interview, I'm 99% sure, he said that the reason why most people are more used to vertical shmups at that time was because our eyes naturally can follow bullets, can follow moving objects from top to bottom better than left to right. And I do agree with that statement. I couldn't tell you what kind of science or what kind of articles he looked at to come to that conclusion. Maybe it's just personal conclusion, personal thing that he came up with. And if that's the case, then that's totally fine. And that's something I do agree with him there. And the reason why I think that's interesting, you brought that up when it comes to talking about resources, when it comes to playing these games, and also making horizontal shmups, is that it's more natural, I think, us as humans, us being the way we are, it's more natural to make something vertical compared to something horizontal, because I think, like Akita said, the natural way, the way our eyes look through things, which I do agree with, that's just something that's inherent to us. It's innate to us. I find it extremely fascinating that whenever somebody does try to make a horizontal shmup, it's not always the same formulaic thing. And I think that's what's interesting about vertical shmups. Another thing I want to highlight about vertical shmups is that, unlike horizontal shmups, like the way Darius plays compared to Border Down is completely different than the way Dodonpachi plays to Balgarega. Now, granted, there are a lot of similarities between Border Down and Darius, like Darius Gaiden, for example. But if you look at Balgarega and Dodonpachi, they're a lot more similar to each other. Yes, Balgarega is an inherently bullet hell, but a lot of the same aspects of Dodonpachi, of Batsugun, really is inherited in both of those games, which I just find to be really fascinating. Again, because not every horizontal shmup, in fact, most people, when they think of a horizontal shmup, there's a good chance they're not even thinking about a bullet hell game, which is the complete opposite when we're talking about vertical shmups. Because pretty much, if you think of a vertical shmup, like 99% of the time, it's probably going to be a bullet hell game, which again, I find extremely fascinating. And I think that's why I think vertical shmups are so prolific, they're so profound in the shmup industry today, is because bullet hells cater themselves really well to vertical shmups. And it's not that they don't cater themselves well to horizontal shmups, it's just that we've had the support and the resources for vertical bullet hell shmups for such a long time now. And I think that's something that is really valuable to a lot of players. A lot of players don't want to get out of their comfort zone sometimes and try a horizontal bullet hell game, because in a lot of ways it's like playing a brand new genre of shmup for the very first time. Like, it's actually insane how different it is. So with that said, I think a couple more interesting things I wanted to point out about the vertical versus horizontal shmup debate is the fact that horizontal shmups just don't get that much attention at all, and it's actually kind of insane, because again, there are some great horizontal shmups out there, and I'm really impressed that a lot of them just don't get that much play. Again, I think the biggest horizontal shmups in the North American, the Western shmup community, it would probably be like the most well-known, it would probably be Darius Gaiden. That's the game I see mentioned a lot on online forums, I see you mentioned a lot on Discord, what have you, and for good reason. I think Darius Gaiden really does hit everyone in the feels. I mean, that game, it looks amazing, it plays amazing, there's a good chunk of score play to be had there. Yes, the gray metals kind of rub people off the wrong way, but in the grand scheme of things, apparently it's not that big of a deal. I don't play Darius Gaiden for score, so I would not know, but from what I've heard other people say, from what I've been able to gather just by playing couple times every month or so, it doesn't seem like silver medals really take up that much of your score. I could be wrong though. I don't want to pass it off as a fact. So Darius Gaiden is up there, and I think it's fascinating when we talk about games like Darius Gaiden, that the games that are breaking barriers, because Darius Gaiden is one of the few shmups that's up there with like Dodonpachi, Balgarega, Ketsui as like the game that everybody knows, the game that everybody's played at least once in their life. It's extremely fascinating to me. In fact, if I go ahead and pull up, I'm going to pull up the Shmup Forum. They usually do a top 20 like every 4 years. Shmup Forum top 20, I think it was like 2022 was like the last one. But okay, I'm not gonna bring it up. But the point is, from what I remembered from the last vote, I think Darius Gaiden was like one of like 2 or 3 horizontal shmups, and everything else was vertical, which again is really fascinating, because I remember Gradius 5 was up there, and I remember the original R-Type was up there as well. I think Thunder Force 4 was there too, right? But yeah, outside of those games, most people haven't played that many horizontal shmups. And so I think if I want to end off this video with anything, I want to say give horizontal shmups a try. I mean, obviously, a lot of us, we love our vertical shmups and we'll never stop playing them, but I think there is something to be had with horizontal shmups. I think horizontal shmups give us a new and unique perspective on how a shmup can work. And I think, oh, another thing I want to talk about, horizontal shmups. I think horizontal shmups are super fascinating in their own right because it takes the best of both worlds in a sense, because especially back in the arcade, it was hell to rotate the monitors. I mean, everybody knows if you own a Tandy Cap, if you own an American Cap, forget it, right? But if you own a Tandy Cap, it is hell for an operator to turn over, rotate the screen 90 degrees for a shmup, especially during the bullet hell era. Because again, while bullet hells were doing okay in the arcade scene, from what I could gather, they weren't doing as well as fighting games, and they were usually for the die-hard arcade heads. So it was a huge risk to completely change your cabinet, because that's what rotating your screen was. It's just literally changing your cabinet. It's a huge cost to turn your cabinet in order to put in a shmup. This cabinet could be used for a fighting game, it could be used for a puzzle game, and the fact that you have to do all this extra work, it really did rub operators the wrong way. So one of the things I found really interesting that, in my opinion, Capcom really spearheaded was this idea of, hey, let's focus on making vertical shmups. And that's something that Capcom was really adamant about when they were getting all lovey-lovey with Cave, with Rising, with Takumi. They were like, hey, we want you to make shmups, but we don't want to alienate our operators, so let's make them vertical shmups. And I think vertical shmups are really interesting. And I do think in a lot of ways they are the perfect solution to a lot of the problems that people have with horizontal shmups versus vertical shmups. Like again, for example, our eyes can trace flying objects better in a vertical dimension, but also at the same time we can still keep our TV screens flat on the ground. And if we don't have a TV screen, we can still keep our computer screens flat on the ground. We don't have to rotate them 90 degrees. But obviously, there are a couple of caveats with vertical. Obviously, you don't get that insane vertical space that you used to have with Tate games. Now you kind of have to spread yourself out more on the left and right ways, basically the x-axis, which is super interesting how developers took advantage of that extra space to make something that was really cool. Like a good example of this is Mars Matrix. The patterns in Mars Matrix, a lot of them just straight up wouldn't work all that well in a fully Tate environment. I think you could make it work, but you definitely have to change a lot around. And I think that's what makes Mars Matrix really special, is that you can only really play that game horizontally. That game would not really work out too well in a vertical space, if you ask me. And I think Takumi was really interesting when they made their horizontal games, because they could now finally put more bullets on the screen than ever before. And I feel like horizontal might have been a big reason why the reflect mechanic that Takumi became so well known for even became a thing, because Takumi's like, well, if we have a player starting on stage 1 and we're throwing all these bullets at them because we have all this extra space, how is the player going to be able to compensate for that? Obviously, smart bombs are not going to be enough, especially for a beginner player. So what if we did them this reflect mechanic or this absorb mechanic in Mars Matrix, so that we can be like, we can have a scapegoat. Hey, even though we put all these bullets, look, you got a reflect mechanic, so don't yell at us, Even though we put a bajillion bullets in stage 1 of Digital Wing 2, you got a reflect mechanic, so don't go whining to us, right? I think the horizontal aspect ratio might have been a huge consideration into why the reflect mechanic was even formed in the first place. God, I just love talking about stuff like this in general. I think just even the thought of talking about aspect ratios and screen orientations and how that affects game design, I find that so fascinating on so many levels. And I find it so fascinating how something as simple as changing the aspect ratio or changing the rotation of, say, like a screen monitor, for example, how that affects game design, how that affects everything about the game. I find topics like these to be so interesting, and I cannot believe that we've gone at least, I want to say, 30, 40 years now in the shmup genre with not that much representation for horizontal games. I think horizontal games have a really special place in shmup history, and I don't want to sound like they're some like ancient thing, because they aren't. And there's still, there's probably at least one new horizontal shmup coming out by an indie dev this year. There has to be. I couldn't name one off the top of my head, so I don't think horizontal is going anywhere per se, but I think the days of horizontal ruling the arcades like they used to in Japan in the late 80s, I think those days are long gone. I think vertical is here to stay. And I think another reason of that is because some of the biggest IPs in the shmup industry, like Toho, like Donpachi, like Rayforce, the Ray games, they're all vertical games. And those are some of the biggest IPs in the shmup industry. Oh my god, Gunbird, holy smokes, forgot about Gunbird. Pretty much most of your favorite shmup IPs, Raiden, most of your favorite shmup IPs most likely are vertical. And again, on the horizontal side, the only IP that I really think survived and really gained a new audience outside of the original arcade heydays is Darius. And maybe to a certain extent also Gradius. I think the thing about Gradius, and the reason why I don't put Gradius on the same level, at least in the shmup hardcore community, like the shmup heads, why Gradius I don't really think has broken the barriers that Darius has, is because Gradius as a game, I don't want to call it janky, but there is a lot of jank to be had for sure. Scoring wise, they're all over the place, and graphically, I mean, look, I love Gradius to death, I really do. But I mean, just look at Darius, dude. Look at G Darius. Like, it's such a tough comparison to make, and I think that's why Gradius 5 again was one of those few Gradius games that has broken the mold on a lot of retro gamers, a lot of even like younger retro gamers. But again, Gradius 5 in the hardcore shmup community, it's light, and people do play it, not as much as people used to in the past. But even then, it's still not quite there yet. I think it's a great game. I think it's one of, I definitely think it's really, I definitely think it's like an S, not an S tier. I think it's like it's definitely an A tier Gradius game for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it hasn't quite hit the level that I think Gaiden and even something like G Darius has in terms of the hardcore shmup community. But in a lot of ways, that's also just attributed to the fact that Gradius 5 just isn't really available anywhere outside of the PlayStation 5. And PS2 emulation is, I hear it's in a pretty good spot right now, but it's a lot more difficult to convince somebody to emulate a PS2 game than like even a Dreamcast game, right? Because the Dreamcast, if you're a shmup head, like the Dreamcast is just a must-have. You just gotta have an emulator. There's so many late Naomi games on that platform. And speaking of the Dreamcast, speaking of the shmups on the Dreamcast, as far as I can gather, Border Down is the only horizontal game in the entire Dreamcast library, which really signifies the decline of horizontal shmups going into the early 2000s, because that's crazy. And I couldn't really name any other horizontal shmups that era outside of, again, Gradius 5. So overall, I think vertical shmups are amazing. I think horizontal shmups are amazing. I think more people need to be trying horizontal shmups for sure. I think horizontal shmups need more love, especially Border Down. That's probably going to be my next video now that I'm thinking about it. Why is Border Down not played enough by a lot of people? I couldn't tell you, but that's going to be another topic for another time. This is going to be Nightwing the Best Robin, signing off.